Hello, folks, and welcome to another episode of the Dr. Mark Foster Show. Today I will be talking about my spiritual development, going back to my childhood and moving up to the present time. I will start when I was 12 years old, when there were two significant changes in my life. One, I became a part of the New Left. The New Left was both a part of an emerging movement to bring about massive change in the United States, but it was also to a large extent affiliated with the Democratic Party. At that time, there was still hope that the Democratic Party could be radicalized. That hope has surfaced several times since then. As a sociologist, I have always been extraordinarily skeptical about whether that could happen, knowing that the character of the United States in the late 20th and early 20th centuries simply does not allow itself to go in that direction. But I've observed it, and back in 1968, when I was only 12, I was somewhat naive, and I also held out that view myself. So I joined an organization called the Students' Democratic Coalition, which again was both a part of the Democratic Party and it was a part of the New Left. I was the vice president of my local chapter. This young girl, around my same age, 12, Steffi Erickson, was the president of our local chapter. It was a relatively large organization. It existed in middle schools, or what was then called junior high schools, and colleges and universities. So it was a very expansive movement that covered various levels of education and students at those various levels. That was one thing. And so, as a result of that, I became very much radicalized, very much of a libertarian communist, which means that I believed in the liberty of the oppressed, not the liberty of the oppressor. For example, just this past week, there was an incident where Rand Paul, who fancies himself a so-called right libertarian, was protesting against an anti-lynching bill. Does that mean he's defending the rights of lynchers? I imagine Rand Paul would disagree with that characterization, but that is certainly the way it appears to me. Why would somebody defend the rights of lynchers? What kind of person would oppose an anti-lynching bill? Well, I guess a libertarian on the right would do that. A libertarian on the left never would, because we again stand for the liberation of all people, especially the liberty of the other, of the socially marginalized members of society. So that gave me a certain perspective which made me kind of a maverick, I suppose. I was unafraid to explore things that perhaps other people were not willing to explore, or to consider ideas that most people were not willing to consider. I became deeply involved or interested in the subject of spirituality, and more specifically, comparative religion, the occult, and ufology, the study of UFOs. I used to hold regular seances with members of my own family. My mother, as a result of that, became deeply interested in those kinds of matters, even when I drifted away from my interest in esoterica My mother never abandoned that, as far as I know, until she died. In 1968, I started my own religion, which I called soulology, the scientific religion of the soul. Now, in retrospect, it was a kind of silly religion. I think silly is an understatement. For example, I explained telepathy as when one soul leaks into another soul. I have no idea what that means right now, but I assume at that time I had something in mind. I've been trying to think about exactly where I got that idea from, and as best I can tell, I simply made it up. But regardless, that was a part of soulology. I also had an idea of parallel dimensions, where the person in the other dimension looked like you, appeared like you, but was in every other respect your opposite, and that the reason why dreams seemed so unusual was because you were literally experiencing your opposite, or seeing your opposite in the world of dreams, which made the dreams appear to be so odd. As a result of my interest in those kinds of matters, I began a search for a religion, that made sense to me, a religion that I could join. First, I believed very strongly in monotheism, and I credit the Hebrew school I attended, Joel Bernstein's Hebrew School in Bayside, Queens in New York City, with being the catalyst for that. But I was a strong monotheist. For that reason, when I was studying various religions, one of the main religions I came across that I had absolutely no interest in was Buddhism, because Buddhism, as I studied it, was an atheistic religion. Now, I have since discovered that there are 3 branches of Buddhism that are theistic. One of them actually did not exist at that time, but 2 did. Now, whether that would have made any difference, most likely not, because it still would have been with me that the majority of Buddhists are atheists. I ended up settling on Sikhism, and I really liked Sikhism. I was very much attracted to the work of Guru Nanak Dev, the founder of Sikhism, who himself was influenced by the Sufi philosopher Kabir. Guru Nanak was born a Hindu, Kabir was born a Muslim. Both of them were a part of the South Asian Bhakti Sufi movement, which I personally regard as being the golden age of Islam. Some people have said that the golden age of Islam took place in southern Europe, in Andalusia, what is now basically Spain. I don't think so. Or perhaps Spain was a minor part of that golden age, but I think the major part was what occurred in South Asia. Muhammad, I believe, was the founder of South Asia in the Bhakti Sufi movement. What the Bhakti Sufi movement was, it was a fusing of Islamic Sufism with the Hindu Bhakti movement. The Bhakti movement was a devotional movement which existed among many Hindus. Guru Nanak was one part of it. There were many other people as well, such as Chaitanya, who has become famous because of the more recent Hare Krishna movement, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, which has a great loyalty to Chaitanya and to Chaitanya's approach to Hinduism and the Vedas, the holy scriptures of Hinduism. But primarily I was attracted to Guru Nanak, and I loved Guru Nanak very deeply. What I did is I found out that there was a Sikh temple in Stockton, California. Now, what I did not know, living in New York City, was that there was a Sikh temple in New York City, but nobody told me. And so I wrote the Sikh temple in Stockton, California. Took a couple of months. Got a letter back from a fellow who said, well, to become a Sikh, you have to wear long underwear draped around your knees, a dagger on your belt. You can never cut hair from any part of your body, and you have to wear a turban. What he didn't tell me was that those were the requirements for being a Khalsa Sikh. A Khalsa Sikh is a baptized Sikh, but a lot of Sikhs are not baptized, meaning they are not bound by the so-called 5Ks. The not cutting your hair, and the turban, and the dagger, and the long underwear, and so forth. If he would have told me that, I might have still been interested in becoming a Sikh, but knowing me, it probably would have turned me off, because if I was going to become a Sikh, I wanted to become a full Sikh, not a half Sikh. And becoming a non-baptized Sikh would probably not appeal to me very much, knowing who I am, which is basically the same as who I was back then. I became then interested in this movement called Ekankar. What I did not know at the time was that Ekankar was a branch, ultimately, of Sikhism. It came out of Sikhism through the Rajaswami movement, which was founded by a Sikh banker named Shiv Dayal, who was known among his followers as Swamiji. Basically, the entire framework of the Rajaswami movement is based on Sikhism, and it's really part of, in a sense, part of the Bhakti Sufi movement, although it started a bit after it, but still fits into that general context of the Bhakti Sufi movement. What I did, I decided that I would join Ekankar. I got an application, filled it out, convinced my mother to pay for 1 year of discourses, which she did, and I sent the letter off in the mail. The mail was returned. Back then it was only snail mail, there was no email back then. And the person said, you did not fill out the application exactly correctly, or something was missing, something like that. Now I looked at it, and I couldn't figure out what I did wrong. As best I can tell, I did nothing wrong. But that again kind of disgusted me. And so I was turned off to Ekankar. I later became interested in other branches of the Rajaswami movement, and subsequently became initiated into 3 of them. I would not recommend that movement to anyone, especially if you happen to have OCD like I do, because what practicing that meditation did, at least to me, was it resulted in a kind of tinnitus, but not real tinnitus, but a kind of just a constant buzzing in my ear, kind of an OCD-ish buzzing in my ear. Never went away. Never went away. And it was very annoying. It was interfering with my sleep. It was causing me a lot of stress. Eventually, after about 10 years, it went away. That's how long it took for that particular thing to go away. So I personally would not recommend that meditation, especially for anybody who has OCD. It's because what you're doing is you're putting yourself into a kind of hypnotic state. You're repeating these sounds in your head, and eventually the sounds become like a buzz because you repeat them rapidly, and that buzz, at least for me, became constant. So even when I was not meditating, I was hearing that buzz. In addition, I don't think that the meditation really is legitimate. I think it's largely imagination, or it promotes personal imagination. Later, in 1970, I was in Macy's department store in New York, and I saw a book by the late Jessica Russell Gaver called The Dynamic New Religion, the Bahai Faith. In hardback, it was called The Bahai Faith, Dawn of a New Day. I purchased that book, brought it home. On the bus back home from Macy's, I scanned through the book a little bit. Didn't really read it, but I scanned through it. What I read was the back cover. And I realized, I said, gee, I accept this. I accepted it with almost no knowledge at all, but I accepted it. And as a result of that, when I got home, I looked up Bahai Faith in the phone book and spoke with this very nice woman, the late Elizabeth Thomas, and I said I would like to be a Baha'i, although I believe I mispronounced it. It said something like Bahá'í or something like that, but I said I would like to be a Baha'i. She was kind of startled. We talked for a bit. She arranged for me to go to a Baha'i meeting the following night. I did, and on that night, I officially joined the Bahai Faith. I remember how happy I was, because I really knew nothing about the Bahai Faith when I joined it. But I remember how happy I was to discover that Baha'is believed in Jesus, because I always believed in Jesus, especially through Ekankar. I was happy to learn that Baha'is believed in Muhammad. And I was happy to learn of the concept of progressive revelation, that revelation does not end. That was one of the things that also somewhat turned me off about Sikhism, because Sikhs believe, mainstream Sikhs believe, that there are only 10 human gurus. After Guru Gobind Singh, the 10th Guru, died, the 11th Guru became their holy book, which is called the Guru Granth Sahib, which is a collection of writings and poems and so forth. And it never made sense to me how a book could replace a human being. Not supplement it, but not replace it. Especially forever, which is what Sikhs believe. That basically there will never again be another Sikh guru. Never. Never again. That's it. But Baha'is, I learned, believe in progressive revelation. That after Baha'u'llah, in 1,000 or more years, another messenger of God will come, and then approximately every 1,000 years thereafter, there will come still further manifestations. In other words, manifestations or messengers of God will come to us forever, and they have come to us forever. That's progressive revelation, and I found that very exciting. Now, a little bit of a on the downside, I also learned that Baha'is do not believe in reincarnation. That was a real test for me, a test of faith for me. because I was a very devout believer in reincarnation. That's part of why I was attracted to Sikhism, because Sikhism was both monotheistic and it taught reincarnation. Judaism was monotheistic, but it did not teach reincarnation. So I found myself in somewhat of a dilemma. I actually considered leaving the Bahai Faith the day after I joined it. It was very traumatic, very traumatic for me to learn that Baha'is did not believe in reincarnation. So I called up Elizabeth Thomas, spoke about this with her, and ultimately I resolved it. And now, at this point in my life, I could not imagine believing in reincarnation. Reincarnation literally no longer makes any sense to me. I look forward, when I die, to going into the next world, to being in a position of service, hopefully as a part of what the Baha'i teachings call al-Khamir, the leaven, a body of souls who serves humanity in this world, including by conveying to them the arts and sciences. People can also be a part of that leaven here in this world, and I pray every night before I go to sleep that I can be a part of the leaven in my dreams, that the guardian angels will bring me souls that are needy, that are lowly, that are despondent, that have nothing at all in this world, that are depressed, that are despised among men, to bring those souls to me and to allow me to teach and comfort them. That's what I pray for. I would like to be a part of Al-Khamir, not only in this world, not only in the next world, but also in the world of dreams. So that was kind of the realization of my long spiritual journey, becoming a member of the Bahai Faith. The Bahai Faith believes in the unity of humanity, that all of us are one, the unity of religions, that all the religions revealed by God are one, all the prophets teach the same virtues, that each prophet gives us more knowledge than the one before, which is the basic idea behind progressive revelation, and the unity of God, that there is only one God, which of course pleased me greatly because of the fact that I was always a very strong proponent and believer in ethical monotheism. So that's a bit about my spiritual journey. I would encourage anybody who does not know about the Bahai Faith, who has not studied it, to at least study it, to consider it. Baha'is don't try to convert people. Only God can convert people. We share the message of Baha'u'llah, the prophet founder of the Bahai Faith, with other souls. But it is up to each soul to investigate that message and to independently decide whether it is true. It's not up to me to make that decision for anybody. Like Muhammad said in the Holy Quran, let there be no compulsion in religion. Religion is not a matter of compulsion. Religion is a matter of faith. And a faith that is based upon force or compulsion is not a true faith. Faith needs to come through conviction and from learning and from acceptance on an inner, subjective, and spiritual level. So I hope that you will investigate the Bahai Faith and at least consider it. It has brought light and joy to my life. My experience subjectively with one particular guardian angel, who I believe was the guardian angel Rivwan, or in Persian Rezvan, visited me one morning. I remember seeing him. He had a multicolored face. He bumped into my bed, said, "Uh-oh." He took my keys off my wall. And I actually called the police and made a police report about it because I didn't know what happened to my keys. 2 days later, I woke up and the keys were back on the wall. That experience awakened me out of my autism, which has made me eternally grateful to the guardian angel Rivwan. Finally, I wish you all happy times in this period of great social unrest. Support the other. Always support the oppressed. Or as Jesus said, always take the side of the poor. Never support the people who are the oppressors. If people of color are demanding more rights, it's because they have no rights. Always support the people who are victims of COVID. The African American community and other people of color are disproportionately victimized by COVID-19, much more so than people like me who have the luxury of staying in my apartment and during the semester teaching my classes online, as I will again in the fall semester. With that in mind, this is Mark Foster signing off. Have a good one.